I'd like to welcome to the Synod Tracy Hume, who's the District Community Engagement Enabler for the Newcastle District. Welcome, Tracy. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tracy, in your role, you've been working very closely with Gateshead Council in tackling issues of poverty. But one of the initiatives that the council's been engaged in more recently is the Warm Spaces initiative. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the background and what the council's hoping to achieve.
Yeah, so the part of the Gateshead Poverty Truth Commission that I was involved with, and working really closely with Gateshead Council as part of it, as well as other people. And Alison Dunn and Catherine Donovan, who are have key roles within Gateshead Council, were also civic commissioners on the Poverty Truth Commission. And so when the energy hikes kind of came in, or began to come in the spring, they anticipated it was going to get much, much worse, and they knew funds would be tight. They knew they wouldn't be able to sort things out for everybody, but they wanted to do as much as they could with the little they had, but to make it spread as far as possible. And they also wanted to involve faith groups, because they were saying, well, actually your buildings are often in the right places. So because we'd been on the Poverty Truth Commission as well, they'd learned that listening to voices of lived experience was vital in moving forward with anything that they did. So they got it in their heads, which was great. So when they had the idea of Warm Spaces, they wanted to check it out with some of our community commissioners. They were asking, look, we've had this thought, but is it a good idea? Is it the sort of thing you think is needed? And if it is, what does it need to look like? So they weren't sitting in an office trying to make a decision about people in poverty without consulting them. So we're like, get in, they've got it, which was great. So we took that to them. They said, yes, that we think it's a really good idea. And they gave some suggestions about what that might look like. Gateshead Council took all of that on board. Then the council said, well, actually, we're wondering about putting a charter together, a Warm Spaces charter that kind of ensures that all of the spaces across the borough have a little bit of commonality in terms of their ethos and the way they're going to run. And so they asked the Poverty Truth Commissioners if they would write the charter, which they did. And it's all about it being a safe space, not just a warm space, so that they would get a warm welcome as well as a warm space, that there would be no judgment as to why they're there, that they would be held confidential, that they were there in the first place, that kind of thing. And there are 52 warm spaces across Gateshead that are going to be opening up. And these will be spaces, the idea is that people can go for somewhere to get warm for an hour or two, where they might be able to charge a mobile phone if that's helpful, get a warm drink for hopefully for free, or there'll be options of pay as you feel type cafes, but it's because some people do want to be able to pay something towards it. And they might be able to get a bit of conversation maybe, or a little bit of company as well. And these will be networked across the borough with a directory that's made public, so that people can log on and work out which ones are nearest to them when they're on, and do that. And then the charter is being used for each of those. So every warm space has to sign up to the charter. But also there are over 100 councils across the country that have approached Gateshead Council to say, how have you done warm spaces? And are wanting to look at potentially using the charter as well, because it's voices of lived experience. So it's a lovely piece of joined up work of building on something that's already happened, but responding to a crisis.
I mean, that's fantastic to hear, although obviously we wish we weren't in these kind of circumstances where it was necessary. But I mean, obviously lots of kind of community groups and buildings are being used. How are churches locally responding to this? And is the council able to offer, community agencies and churches any practical support in terms of finance?
Yeah, so the church, so initially I just approached churches. I was asked to approach churches in Gateshead, particularly in some of the areas where they felt there were going to be gaps in community spaces that they already had access to, like libraries, that kind of thing. They wanted them in some of the areas of the most concern. So I approached the two circuits that straddle Gateshead and asked them if they had things already in place that we could extend or build on. or the churches who were already thinking of doing something missional in their community, and this might be the sort of spur that they needed because it was something they could practically do. And so that's going really, really well. We've got a range of churches involved. So we've got one church who are going to be offering tea and toast, either just before kids start school or straddling it to being after they've been dropped off, to make sure that parents and children get a little bit of breakfast. If they can't afford a breakfast club, they can maybe come and get that. Another one we're just about to set up something called Two Soups, linking to a good old Mrs. Overall sketch, but they are going to be able to make that their warm space and offer soup. Another one are going to do something in an afternoon, and so another one is linking to their Fair Share facility they already have, and building on that. So there's all sorts of things going on that are going to help. And the council have been, they were trying to work out, well, we've got this household support fund. So every council has been given a pot of money from the household support fund. And Gateshead Council wanted to use a third of that money for warm spaces. And so what they said was any building that wanted to become a warm space could apply for a grant of up to £500 that had to be used by the end of September. So we're kind of already in this process with them. But in the spring statement, the Chancellor at the time did indicate there would be further money for the winter. So once we have the new Prime Minister sorted out and in place, we're hoping that will be confirmed. And then Gateshead Council will say to all those spaces, you can also apply for some more money to top that up over the winter, and hopefully maybe some more new spaces as well. They're also offering some training. So every warm space has to send one person onto a Zoom training that makes sure that it's going to be a safe space, to remind them of all those things that need to be in place to keep people safe. And part of that training is going to be delivered by one of our community commissioners, who's going to be able to share their lived experience of what it feels like to cross the threshold of those kind of things, help them understand what that feels like to be on the other side of the fence, and just be aware of that power differential that is sometimes unconsciously there. So they're already doing quite a bit, and the money that we can get for a grant can be used towards fuel bill. We know that churches are going to be in the same problem as many of our houses. They don't have the price cap. So they can apply towards putting it towards a utility bill, or to provide the refreshments for free, or to expand on what they're doing, or put in some energy efficiency measures as well. So they're really flexible about how that money is used.
Thank you. You very kindly sent me some literature in advance of our conversation, and in the literature was mentioned something called Gateshead Thrive. What's Thrive, and what do you think Methodist churches in the region might be able to learn from what's in that document?
So Gateshead Thrive is basically the 5 key commitments that the Gateshead Council have to their people in their communities in Gateshead, that they will literally thrive. It says, it is what it says on the tin, but they're about working together, working towards equality for all, supporting communities to help themselves and each other, and putting people first. And because Gateshead have worked so well with the Poverty Truth Commission, they're already listening to those voices of lived experience. But as a Methodist church, they just fit in with the ethos that we have. We want to see people included. We want communities to thrive and to be able to use the assets that they already are because of who they are. And you know, for us, we'd say they're God-given gifts of individuals who all bring something different. And it's about empowering people to help their own community and themselves. And again, that sometimes as churches, we're maybe more tempted to want to do things for communities and to communities because that makes us feel good. But some of this agenda and some of what we're hoping Warm Spaces will be about is about saying, actually, we're all kind of part of this. And we're just coming together and working together, and we're going to support one another in doing that. This isn't something we're doing to you. And one part of the training as well includes saying, well, if you get some regular folk coming to the warm spaces, because some people are likely to come every week at the same time, what would it be like if they were to become hosts sometimes as well as guests? That they become one of that team that serves the teas and coffees and that kind of thing, so that we're working together, not just providing a service.
Sounds very gospel, which is great news. And I know in the Synod there'll be a number of churches, circuits that will be thinking about the Warm Spaces initiative and how they might respond. I just wonder if you have any kind of words of encouragement for those who might be thinking about that at the moment.
I think there's something about acknowledging, look, we can't solve the cost of living crisis. We might love to do that, but it's not in our gift to do that. We can raise concerns and that kind of thing, but we can do something simple, and we can be there for the people in our local communities who are struggling. And our buildings, for a change, can be a treasure in this crisis, not just always that millstone. Sometimes it feels like it can be a burden with property and finance and everything else. I would say as well, keep it simple. That if you do something like this, we're not talking about being all singing, all dancing, trying to be something clever. Methodists are really good at making a good cup of tea and coffee and putting on a coffee morning. So all we're doing is kind of making something that we're already used to doing, but making it available at a time that is going to help the community. So having a conversation with maybe people that we are aware of who might access this and say, well, what would be the best time or the best time in the week? What would work with what else is available? Don't make assumptions, but keep it simple. So it may just be simple as you're putting on free tea and coffee, and you might decide you're going to put out a couple of newspapers for people who want to stay for a little while, or a couple of jigsaws, a couple of board games that they can sit and do. You might just offer a bowl of soup, something like that, or some toast. It doesn't have to be a gourmet 3-course meal, with just something simple. And think about when your building is already open. We know that energy bills for churches are going to be a real worry. So if your building is already opened, or you've got a couple of bits of your building, is there a bit that's already open for a hire that you could then just use another part of the building that's already being heated to put your warm space on, so you're not doubling up? Keep it safe. Safeguarding is going to be absolutely essential in all of this. Might have vulnerable people through our doors. We're making ourselves vulnerable. So doing that risk assessment to make sure that you feel comfortable doing what you're doing, you've thought about what might happen and how you might deal with those things, and ensured that everybody is filled in whatever form they need to do, so that it's a safe space for everybody. And again, that's not complicated. It's fairly simple, the forms that we have available as a Methodist church. And just, if there are funds in your area, and I think most councils now have woken up to this and are providing funds. The Methodist Church are also linking in with something called Warm Welcome organisation, and they're hoping to look at having some funds available that churches can apply for as well. And we'll have conversations maybe with our districts as to whether there is some funding that districts can make available to enable churches to do this really, really important piece of work. If we can't raise our game at the time of national crisis, then when are we going to do something? What would Jesus do? And I kind of think he'd have the kettle on. So so just keep it simple and do what you have. What is your gift that you can offer?
Well, thank you, Tracy, both for the challenge and the rootedness of all that you've said. And I'm going to hand it over to Synod now to kind of discuss all that you shared with us. So bless you and all that you do.
Thank you.